Time for Ask the Mayor on KWBE with Beatrice Mayor Bob Morgan. Good morning, Bob.
Doug, good morning.
Good morning to you. A little blustery overnight, but great weather lately. You can get outside. You know, it's kind of nice this time of year.
Yeah, I think I canceled my tea time for today, however.
Yeah, it's a little bit brisk today. I don't think it's going to crawl out of the 30s, but hey, the weekend's always arriving, and
That's right.
It'll be better then.
Absolutely.
I did not get to go to it yesterday, but the Beatrice Board of Public Works meeting, not a lot of items on the agenda, but I think one of them was... I don't know what it was about necessarily, but meal discussion? What was that about?
Yes. First of all, I would like to just say that, Beatrice is really very fortunate to have people that are dedicating their time to be on the Board of Public Works. Mm-hmm. What they do there is a very important part of, I think, Beatrice, and very important part of shared governance. They look at a lot of things in the revenue side, which is streets and the water and sewer and sanitation, and they have an important job. The meal plan comes down to the fact that it is the one board that the members get paid. It's $15 a meeting, so it's not a lot of money. However, with state statute, if they're paid, the meal that they have, which I think is really, really good because they share ideas and sit down, and they can also get back to work, they pay for their meals. Because it's not an unpaid board, since it's a paid board, and so the discussion really was it's time to, their $4 or $5 they were all chipping in weren't quite covering it, so now they had to increase their meal plan from I think $3.20 to $5.
I see. Okay.
And they really felt like that was no problem. I mean, they're not doing. None of those people on the board are doing it for the money.
Yeah.
You calculate it out, and by the time they do the meal plan, it might be $150 a year. So they're not doing it for the money, and they have the best interest of the community at heart, and they give us the ability to bring things to the city council that they've already really studied. And I thought yesterday was really a good conversation on just a number of topics because we have the new member, Steve Hartley. Mm-hmm. And so they did take some time and talk about, what happens if people owe money. And then they talked about what I thought was real interesting is the challenge that we've kind of had clear back from the COVID days of supply chain. Mm-hmm. I mean, if I get this wrong, I'm sorry, but I was thinking that like a new transformer might have 2.5 years to be able to get one. And so what you've really got is you've got some forwarded costs into the next year because you weren't able to get that. It had nothing to do with not making the purchase. It had everything to it to get here. So there's going to be a number of issues like that I'm glad that we have that advisory group there.
Almost seems like you have to really change your planning schedule, too, because let's say you need an electric department bucket truck where you might have, say, in the past gotten it in 4, 5, 6 months, and now you're talking a couple of years. How soon do you start on a replacement schedule or even talking about things like that? Yeah,
you're going to have to look 2 to 3 years out, which is really hard. When you think about technology, like the bucket truck, we don't buy those every day. Yeah. So, you have to plan ahead and say, this is what I want in this bucket truck because it's got the technology we need, knowing full well 5 years down the road, it's not going to have the same technology. I mean, it's just like, goodness gracious, I had an iPhone 8 for many, many years, and I didn't really need a new one until I dropped it and busted it. But then the new technology was, in the iPhone 14 or whatever it is like, oh, wow, I didn't know it could do this. And, it's a double-edged sword with cell phones. But anyway.
Yeah. Get a few generations behind and you realize just how far you are in back of the current technology. And everybody tries to keep those smartphones longer, too, because they aren't cheap, that's for sure.
No, sometimes I think it's more costly to lose my cell phone than my wallet.
Yeah. Just hand it over to somebody. Anything from department heads on the Board of Public Works meeting yesterday? I know sometimes they give reports on some of the activities are going on. Every once in a while you have a water main break or you have a project that is able to continue through the winter.
Right. We had the one water main break over Christmas, but that was fixed right away. Mm-hmm. We haven't had any more water main breaks, and Jason Moore and his folks, they always have projects of potholes and cracks to fill. So they've been doing that because the weather's so nice.
Yeah.
Pat Feiss is the one that brought up that, they've they had to forward some expenses into 2023 because they do have a new truck coming, and so that, they're still hopefully waiting to get that. But this is really kind of a quiet time. January happens to be one of those times where, typically the weather, if it's really, really nice, you've got a few projects you can do, but you're also trying to just get everything ready to go for the spring.
Yeah. I think if I remember right, you're one quarter of the way through your most recent fiscal year, somewhere thereabouts, October, November, December.
Right,
whatever.
we are.
How are you doing on the public works side financially, as far as you can see at this point?
At this point in time, we had an update, and we're really, hitting our numbers. I think we're a little bit ahead on the cash side, but those basically are, for instance, we have to have all our roofs fixed from the hailstorm, and so that insurance money has been paid, so it's sitting there, but we know that it's going to go out. So if you analyze it, we're about where we've been in years past.
I was thinking you always track during warmer months, water sales, electricity usage, of course sewer usage goes along with water too, but this past year, what were the challenges there in terms of, were there times when you just maybe didn't see revenue coming in like it should, or were things pretty steady, do you think?
I think things were pretty steady. This year it's been a little lighter until, the last month. And I think everybody saw a jump in their electric bill for the last month because, we were using more energy to keep our houses warmer. But overall, I think the electric department's in a really good spot, and I think that was the plan. We're away from NPPD now for 5 years, and we've been able to purchase our own energy for basically through 2030. So by managing those type of things, and when you don't, energy is, and I'm not the wizard. I'm glad we have Tobias Templemeyer who can figure out all the power issues there. But if I remember correctly, there are months that we don't use all of our electricity, so then we sell that.
Yeah.
So it's not as much as what we'd hope to get, but at least there's ways that we can minimize our costs.
Right around the new year, you got that, it was brief, but you had that really cold snap for 2 or 3 days, and everybody got to thinking of, oh no, are we going to have another vortex situation like we did back in, 21 in February?
February 21.
Where, that just caused all kinds of problems across the middle part of the country. But luckily, things have abated. That hasn't been the problem so far.
And that's probably, it's really, really good that the planning that the electric department did, they had some cash reserves. And so where other communities had to pass that surcharge on to everybody's bill, we were able to basically buffer or pay that, so we didn't have exorbitant rates for everybody for like a year. So hats off to the people that do the planning, and hats off for always having some type of cash reserve.
Consultants always recommend, how much of a reserve you need in all these utilities. And, of course, it doesn't work that way for absolutely every location. So it kind of pays to have some people who have been through the actual life situation about, here's what we faced when this happened, here's what we could face if it happened again. And that factors into setting reserves as well.
It does. You can always, you can do it by the numbers, but again, we're very fortunate with the department heads and the employees we've had. We've been able to, they have that knowledge. But remember, and we'll be remembering that February 2021 for a long time.
There were some very cold temperatures. I think we talk about wind chills down to minus 30. That was practically the air temperature back then. So that was kind of a brutal period. Before we take a break here, I did want to just ask you about it. It's not something that anybody wanted to see happen, but of course they had the MUDECAS tournament this week, which draws a lot of people and teams into the city, and great action for fans to watch of those schools and those teams competing. And had a little unfortunate incident on Monday where a training exercise, I guess, allowed some pepper spray to move its way into the city auditorium. And luckily, that didn't appear to be any major health consequences, but it was an inconvenience, though.
It was, and the city apologizes, and I know that Chief Hickman has apologized. It was the perfect storm. They were, in training, you always try to have your officer somewhat experience what pepper spray does, and it was one of those times of the year that the weather got nice. They did it outside, but the air conditioner was probably on in the gymnasium because it was a nice day for MUDECAS, and unfortunately, some of that was in the air and got sucked into the ventilation system. That's how it entered into the building, and as I think about it, we all have had those moments where we sit back and analyze and realize we made the mistakes, and we won't do that again.
Yeah. Sometimes a life experience results in a better policy later on, too.
That is true, yes.
All right. 8:43 our time on Ask the Mayor with Mayor Bob Morgan. We'll have more in a moment. You're listening to Ask the Mayor today with Beatrice Mayor Bob Morgan. Recently at a council meeting, you had, or council work session, you had discussion about suggestions on changing some one-way streets back to two-way travel. Since that meeting, what's been the level of public input you've received so far?
Oh, I will always gladly take more, and so will other councilmen, but I've had some really good feedback. Mm-hmm. I've had feedback from, the people that it probably affects the most that live on 7th and 8th Street. Mm-hmm. I've also had feedback from people who use that street. So, I think it's all been good feedback. Again, I don't know what the other councilmen have received, and I'm not sure, as I encourage anybody, if they have a strong opinion, to come to the city council and share that during our discussion, because we will take a vote on that. It's hard for me to, most of the people that I have had are not in favor. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure there are some people that are in favor. I think the one thing that came out that so far has said is maybe we need to look at the speed on the street. Yeah. Again, as far as traffic accidents, there's been very few. Mm-hmm. But we are taking a look at it. I know it's been taken a look at a number of times. We're going to, have a resolution on the agenda, and hopefully we'll have a good discussion. And we'll see where we end up.
I think the last time I remember it was discussed just very briefly. You mentioned traffic speed. I think 7th especially, there was some concern there as traffic heads by the courthouse there up toward Lincoln Street, that it was going pretty fast in that area, and that might have been more of the problem than actually the direction of travel. Yeah,
and there's ways that we can address that. Mm-hmm. A lot of the stuff, a lot of the responses that I got were, they don't feel like the system's broken, so why fix it? But there's a few people that are also concerned about speed and safety, and we all have to be concerned about safety. So even no matter what the outcome is, we're going to have to take a look at what maybe the speeds are.
Now, I understand this would be in between Ella and Monroe on 7th and 8th, but was there any thought toward maybe not making it that extensive in terms of length, but say maybe going toward Lincoln Street as an example rather than Monroe?
No, I think it's the discussion has always been on that distance.
Okay. Right. So a vote Monday night, and you'll wait?
It seems like it's an important issue, which it may or may not be, but I think in the scope of things we need to put it to bed. And when you think about all the other things that are on our agenda and what's going to happen in the next 4 years with traffic and streets and those type of things, it's one of those things we need to just move on, and the vote's going to allow us to do that one way or the other.
Since I wasn't here last week, I didn't get a chance to ask you about when the council approved the hiring of Chet McGurry to be the new Community Development Officer. What's kind of an update of that since that time in terms of how the department is arranged? Do you then move up the second in command to the code enforcement position, or how is that working out?
Well, with Chet being the director of the Community Development Department, the hiring process and the interview will really be him going through that process. I think there's some decisions to make. We have, 3 people in that Community Development Officer, and so the position will be backfilled, but it really will be Chet's decision on how that's backfilled.
Okay. 8:49 our time. We'll wrap up Ask the Mayor coming up in just a moment. Back on Ask the Mayor to finish up things today with Beatrice Mayor Bob Morgan. The time of the year, there should be snow on the ground, and although that's fine with me that there's not, and I take it with you as well, but, we've had maybe 2 snow events, and neither one has been more than 2 inches at most or something. And you got to be doing pretty well on supplies and costs for handling winter.
We are. We're in good shape.
Yeah.
I think salt will last. I mean, don't have to worry about that. And I think I think Jason's pretty in good shape with the brine, but the brine is something you try to, it doesn't have as long a shelf life. So, and I should just mention that sometimes, that brine will go down when there might be heavy frost coming up or, the warming and the thawing, and it's just a way to really keep the streets safer.
Yeah.
And people are getting used to it. I think now people are saying, oh, they put, the brine down, so there must be a storm coming.
Yeah.
But in some cases, we just do it for preventative maintenance.
Well, and you see those lines, especially going over bridges. It's kind of nice to have because I know when I come to work in the morning, even on a day when, you, like you say, you don't even have winter weather, it can still get a little frosty just because of the moisture coming up under the bridge. So it does kind of help out.
Yep, it does. It does. There might be snow in the forecast next week. We can't really hold this January little nice weather probably around forever. But as I think the old timers, and I guess I'm getting to that point, but they'll tell you that we're definitely one day closer to spring.
Yeah, but we've seen snowstorms in April too, so
that's true.
Could happen at any time. So, any kind of another topic? Any update regarding the Kensington or the situation there as to negotiations or finding somebody to make use of that?
We did have the building looked at by an engineer, and the building's in really, really good shape. I think you'll see on the consent agenda the City Council approving a application for some grant monies that are designed for rehabbing buildings such as that, maybe for some type of housing or whatnot. So we've applied for that grant because we believe that we've got a good opportunity, and I think it's up to $1 million. If we get that grant, then we have to figure out how do we make it work for things like the Kensington.
I had somebody ask me about ever since the building, what's been known as the Barber Building, was demolished at 413 Court. What happens to the empty space now? Or is anything can anything go in there? Or maybe someone else purchase it, or whatever the case may be.
It's not a very wide spot.
Yeah.
And at this point in time, it'll probably turn into green space until we can figure out maybe what a little better opportunity with it. And it's one of those things that we wish that building would not have had to be taken down, but it's it's just the way it is. And so right now we're probably looking at green space, and nothing has been formally decided.
Okay. Got to double back on my list here. I skipped over one thing, but I did want to ask you about it. I noticed on city's website you have quite a few number of ads out for seasonal positions or positions within departments, utility departments, jobs and things like that, along with all the usual taking bids for projects and things like that. On the employment side, we hear about people kind of struggling in the private sector to find workers at times for jobs. How has that, if at all, affected the city or its departments, or have you been able to, find enough applicants and be able to keep those hiring levels up?
Well, to find quality workforce is hard.
Yeah.
And, we sometimes have that struggle. I think, we felt very blessed that we had 2 internal candidates for the Director of Community Development. I mean, that's a tough spot. It's enforcement. But we had 2 people that were interested, and both were interviewed. And, I think overall, when you look at a lot of things of why people want to stay with whatever business they are, I think we've got a very good work environment. I think the department heads are all good. I think they are good leaders, and I think they support their people. And, that word gets around that it's a good place to work, and that certainly helps us attract people that want to come to the city to work.
Do public entities or local governments, do you have to kind of walk a fine line on, pay levels and things, because you don't want to draw always criticism from the private sector saying, hey, you pay so much that I can't get people to work, but you still have to remain competitive to get people to work. How do you approach that in terms of...
Well, it's a little bit of a fine line, but then also, we have, for most of the electricity and the fire and the police, we also have the unions. And so a lot of that is contract driven from, pay raises and those type of things. So in some respects, that kind of takes care of itself.
On the public safety side, sometimes you lose people to other departments in bigger cities too.
Oh, we do.
Yeah.
I mean, we certainly can't pay the same rate that a Lincoln or Omaha has, but we certainly may have a better living and arrangement in Beatrice than some of the other places. So
Smaller community, maybe a little bit good quality of life, a little friendlier, not as much
Right.
crime, that type of thing. Or,
right, yeah. So but we do. I think the hardest part for us to have kept for a while, and I think we're okay now, but it's been the paramedics. I mean, that's you can go places and make more money if that's what you want to do. Now, I'm very thankful for the paramedics that we have, and I think they have embraced the community.
I have just a couple of minutes or so left. Beyond next council meeting on Monday, you have that work session coming up on the 23rd, kind of a goal-setting
Yes.
session there. What kind of discussions have been going on in terms of, any council members giving you any kind of hint about what they're going to suggest, or maybe the administration is saying, here's a couple of areas that, hey, we'd like to do, but to this point we haven't, or have there been any kind of preliminary discussions like that?
Have not had a lot of preliminary discussions there. One of the things that was decided, when people submit their goal ideas, that we did it anonymously, and we'll compile a list, and then I think the true discussion will be coming out of that work session.
Yeah.
Probably I'll have the opportunity to take a look at the goals ahead of time and organize them, and also see if there's some, if they are just ideas. There may be a couple of things on those goals that may not be in line with what I believe is best for the city. So I'll have to figure out how to address those. But I think overall, I'm kind of excited just to see what people are thinking.
Then you get to find out how much can you afford to tackle over various levels of time, too.
Yes, that will be, it's coming at the right time because we're going to be doing our new budgets for the next 2 years in September for October 1st. But certainly, I mean, that's going to be the hard part. There's only so much money.
That biennial budgeting process, is that a good approach, better than maybe the annual type of, planning for budgeting, do you think?
I think it is, particularly now,
Yeah.
because we have all these major big ticket items in the supply chain that we talked about. It's a little easier to slide that money into the next year in a biennium than trying to figure out, okay, now we got to carry it over and how do we do the accounting to there. And so I think it does. I think it allows us to look forward. I think 2 years is the right number.
Okay. Well, we'll see you at Monday night's council meeting then, Mayor.
All right. Thank you very much.
You bet.